Everyone loves a good blockbuster. We simply can't get enough of the heroism, romance, action, suspense, epic scale, and stakes. A good high-production motion picture gets everyone excited. But most importantly, it gets the wallets going. Big blockbusters are known for printing money. That's why we get so many of them, which leads, just like the Not Disney and the Not DreamWorks collections, to cheap rip-offs after cheap rip-offs and scummy impersonations all after a slice of that delicious, lucrative pie. There are whole companies that exist solely to ride off the success of popular movies like the infamous Asylum films. But I want to go deeper than that. I have chosen 4 of the most interesting looking Hollywood rip-off movies I could find, some going as far back as nearly 4 decades ago, to see what kind of craziness was out there to add to my ever-growing collection of rip-off atrocious cash grab films. And no spoilers, but one of these 4 movies is probably the worst film I have ever seen in my entire life, and I know I've said that quite a few times at this point, but believe me, this time I mean it. Some of these movies were so rare and hard to find that getting physical copies was a massive pain in the ass, so I had no choice but to find them on the darkest depths of the internet. So let's introduce the list of movies, shall we? First up, we have Turkish Star Wars, which speaks for itself on what it's ripping off, I think. Alien 2, which was released right after the success of Ridley Scott's Alien. Psycho Shark, or Jaws in Japan, is yet another shark movie riding off the success of Spielberg's Jaws. And finally, a shitty little animated film called Savior of the Earth, which is a shameless rip-off of Tron from 1982. As you've probably worked out, I wasn't able to get a physical DVD of this one, so I just stuck a printout of the cover onto a copy of Richard Hammond's biography that I just happened to find abandoned on a bench when I was walking my dog. I'm not going to bother randomizing this one on a big wheel because there are way fewer films to cover, so let's just hop in and get rolling. Oh, the garbage is hurting my eyes, it stings! Turkey Star Wars. Oh, hang on, no, I read it wrong. It says Turkish Star Wars. Turkish Star Wars, or The Man Who Saved the World, or if we want to be ultra accurate, Dünyayı Kurtaran Adam, is the most manic crazy shit I've ever seen. The DVD case even makes the very bold claim that it's quite possibly the worst film ever made. Who ever heard that before? Which, if true, would be a convenient way to end the search for the worst. But is it really that bad? Well, let's dive in and take a look. Your first thoughts are probably drawing you mostly towards the title, Turkish Star Wars, as most people call it. The box looks like a Star Wars movie. They use the official font. In a lot of ways, it may look like any number of the other rip-off films I've covered before. However, if I was going to give you one piece of advice, it would be to not doubt for a second the unpredictable nature of Turkish Star Wars. Instead of being a goddamn big baby and just copying other movies to try to trick grannies into buying it, this film is unique because it quite literally has pirated footage from the original Star Wars within its own runtime. The story goes that all of the elaborate sets they had built for this movie were destroyed in a storm because they assembled them on a beach for some reason. I don't know, that's what the trivia says. The studio then refused to pay for the set's reconstruction, so the producers were left with no choice but to bribe a night watchman at a Turkish film distributor and proceed to pirate copy a print of Star Wars A New Hope. So almost randomly throughout the film, there are a bunch of non-sequential shots from Star Wars that they use to loosely attempt to fill the gaping holes in their hilarious script. We're talking about a movie that is such a bodge job that they somehow managed to scramble together in about 2 months of total production time, with about a quarter, maybe less, of the movie being completely pirated from other sources, all culminating in a feature that is almost entirely incomprehensible, all the way down to its opening credits. Oh, okay then. The story loosely seems to resemble that of Star Wars, starting with a space battle, characters being stranded in the desert, an evil villain who wants to dominate the universe, and an epic cantina showdown, except the main difference being that here, things just sort of happen. I really don't know why. You'll probably drive yourself crazy if you attempt to rationalize what is being shown here, so please just do me a favor and bear with me as I attempt to explain what you're seeing, as I slowly descend into fucking madness. The first 3 minutes is nothing but a confusing Lord of the Rings style narration explaining what's going on. I say explaining, most of which are just random clips from A New Hope, which if you look, they've been all squished and they don't look right because this film is shot in a different aspect ratio to Star Wars. From what I can gather from the terribly translated text, humans moved out of the space age to the galaxy age, where the Earth and planet systems turned into a galaxy system in space, and people started an intense struggle to discover the secret of eternal life. So essentially we're talking about a universe that is so advanced that their main goal is to discover how to live forever. Everyone is unified under a single roof, where every nation, race and religion have merged together into a single entity. But then they describe how people still live in tribes on Earth and constantly nuke each other, despite how aligned they are. They literally nuke each other to the point where pieces of the Earth begin to physically break off into shards. Phrased in the narration as, however, that sometimes the IHE crumbled into small pieces. Then they talk about how the Earth was made to fall apart madly and became matter out of beams and energy 5 billion years ago. God, I feel like I'm going crazy reading this. Blah, blah, blah, blah, blah. Who was the enemy? Who was the enemy? Not even the movie knows. Blah, blah. Resistance formed using a layer combined with human brain power. Blah, blah, blah. I can't take more of this. Clearly, there is one of two things happening here. Either this is entirely lost in translation, or it is just complete nonsense with no explanation. Anyway, the two strongest Turk warriors are sent somewhere to fight an unknown enemy, when in actuality, it's just actors green screened in front of random clips from Star Wars.
İnişe geçiyorum.
About 10 minutes pass of seemingly unrelated battling from A New Hope, and finally the real thrust of the movie comes into play. The two main characters wind up stranded in a desert. They banter about how irresistible to women they both are. Then the actors stand there and have to pretend they're seeing a bunch of ancient historical remnants, such as the pyramids and a sphinx, indicating that they're on a remnant of Earth, long forgotten. Wouldn't it be cool if we had music and champagne? Our titular hero randomly says, still hoping deep down that they crash-landed on a planet only populated by women.
O hiçbir kadının dayanamadığı meşhur ıslığına başla bak.
Ah yes, every woman's number one weakness, a romantic whistle. Oh, good lord, I'm absolutely swooning. Unfortunately for our dudes, the sexy as hell whistling instead attracted a bunch of skeletons riding horses.
Kadın yerine iskeletler geldi.
I know, it's really annoying when that happens. Cue the pirated Indiana Jones theme and commence a huge fight with the skeletons. Oh, this is the best. I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. The action in this movie is totally mad and is easily the best thing about it. Half the time it seems almost completely improvised. Like, did you really need to run underneath that horse? What are you, crazy? It makes me wonder how many people got horrifically injured during the making of this. Quite a few, I expect. For some reason, this film likes to try to jump scare you. What is this, Five Nights at Freddy's? It's actually quite cute when it isn't alarming or confusing. The fellas get captured and are forced to fight in some kind of gladiatorial battle, where if you win the fight, you get to walk away with your life. So after a few children are murdered, I guess there's another big fight. This is kind of how Turkish Star Wars goes. Fight. Travel somewhere. Fight. Repeat. Apparently, the original cut of this film was about 2.5 hours long instead of the barely hour-and-a-half length of the DVD that I watched. It was cut so short supposedly because the production team was worried about the marketability of 2.5 hours of this, which in the end I am incredibly thankful for, because this film already feels about 2.5 hours long already. It's fun at first and it has flashes of hilarious brilliance here and there, but it's so bare bones, so impossible to understand because of everything that was cut out, that it really starts to grate after a while. The main actor in this movie actually wrote the screenplay. I said wrote, which is probably why his character is so incredibly flawless and irresistible to women. It's pretty similar to the ridiculous way Tommy Wiseau wrote his character in The Room. Speaking of women, they stumble across some lady whose only character trait is that she's hot and mute. So there are a creepy amount of scenes where the two potential lovers just stare at each other and smile for what feels like minutes at a time. The Obi-Wan Kenobi wise teacher character shows up.
Kimsin sen? Bir ihtiyar.
and rattles off a bunch of crazy-ass exposition about how the main characters used to be robots or something. I really don't know. The main thing that I did pick up on was that the villain of this movie is explained as being the owner of the shard of Earth they're stranded on. It's all extremely flowery and hard to follow. The villain Darth Vader-like character is sort of a dictator figure. His scenes are frustrating because he quite literally just repeats the same type of dialogue about how strong and unstoppable he is over and over and over and over, and it just never stops.
Ben kuvvetliyim. Ben yenilmem.
Man, there hasn't been any action for a while. Alright, yeah, a bunch of mummies kill some children. There's your action fix for a while. Possibly my favorite scene in the movie is a bizarre training montage where the lead character awkwardly smacks rocks, karate chops more rocks, and eventually becomes so powerful that he's able to chop a rock in half with his bare hands. Meanwhile, the other main character is playing with, what is that, sand? To top it all off, our protagonist straps rocks to his legs and proceeds to jump around like a kangaroo, training his muscles to the point where they're so powerful that he has the ability to jump extremely high into the air, and most definitely not without the aid of a trampoline hidden just out of frame. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this film likes random things exploding. That just happens sometimes. There's a fight in a cantina for some reason, probably because Star Wars did it. I really can't tell who they're fighting or what they're doing because there's no consistency. I'm pretty sure the costumes change between shots all the time. It's just a nightmare to keep track of. They're captured yet again and are put in dandy clothes. The villain wants to join forces with the hero, but our guy is just too pure of heart, so he shows him a brain. As if that's supposed to prove something. Alright, I suppose spiky Darth Vader wants to harvest their brains. Let's just move on. Fight! They get beamed and captured for the 40th time. Then something so horrific happens that I simply can't describe it.
Hiçbir insan bu işkenceye dayanamaz.
Oh, hang on, it's fine, they standed the torture.
İşkenceye dayandılar.
Fight! Fight and jump! Jump the enemy to death! The great whistler and sand player gets captured. And the main character gets a lesson on the importance of Islam by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Also, there's some mention of a sword. Remember that, it's important. Fight! Oh, there's the sword. Nice. What a ridiculous, impractical design. Luckily, the mute woman just shows up out of nowhere and whips out a brain and is finally able to talk.
Kılıç ve beyin ölümlü insanın eline geçinceye kadar konuşamazdım.
Oh, right, of course. Because she was destined not to speak until the brain and the sword was held by a mortal. Fight! The protagonist frees his friend, but his friend arrogantly takes the ultimate weapons and takes on the villain one-on-one after being tricked by the magician. The magician is the main villain, by the way, that looks like Darth Vader. It's simple stuff. I've been describing it this whole time. If you are lost, you are dumb. You're a dumb idiot if you don't understand what's happening in this film right now.
Sihirbaz kılıca ve beyne dokundu. En sonunda istediği oldu.
What? I'm so sorry, this is genuinely the story. I have no other way of making it more simple. The sand smacker gets killed, and things get really serious.
Keşke dünyadaki sevgilim de beni sevseydi.
It's time to take on the baddie one last time. To prepare for the fight, the ultimate jumper melts the ultimate sword down into liquid and makes gloves out of them. Ah, yes. Now the ultimate fight of all time happens. Intercut between the emotional battles are clips of the Death Star destroying Alderaan. Aren't you on the world, you idiot? Oh, okay. I don't know what this means. At long last, the final battle is here. Everything has been leading to this, and what happens is so beautiful. I have no words to describe it. I guess all the training earlier must have paid off, because his strength is so mighty that he quite literally cuts spiky Darth Vader in half. So with balance restored, our guy flies away in the Millennium Falcon to return home for another adventure. It's beautiful stuff. I'm so torn on this movie. You instinctively want to give it a bit of a pass because it seems so dated, cheap, and old, and you simply can't ignore how charming so much of it is. However, just for reference, this film was released in 1982, the same year as Blade Runner, E.T., and The Thing, all classic, timeless movies. Now, obviously, I would never expect the same quality from such a tiny production, and the film only seems to exist to write off the success of the first two Star Wars films, but the only thing I really genuinely like about it is the childlike energy in the action scenes. Aside from that, everything's pretty nauseating. Basically, every element of the film is bad in some way, be it the stolen music, the footage in the wrong aspect ratio, appalling mixing, awful costumes, dreadful editing, scatterbrain pace, and writing. I find films like this really hard to even critique in any way, because a lot of why it's so bad is obvious. Just look at it. Despite how boring and tiring it can be, I still have a weird affection for this movie. I'm not surprised it has a bit of a cult following, because in the right context, this film can be entertaining as hell. Alien 2. The real one. Alien 2 on Earth sucks so hard I almost left it out of this video. Sneakily named Alien 2 right before the trademark of Alien was registered to cash in on the success of one of my favorite movies, Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979. It's an English-dubbed Italian-American production that admittedly does seem more like a real movie in comparison to Turkish Star Wars, which actually came out 2 years after this, but nevertheless is ultimately quite unable to fulfill the need of being entertaining or worthy of its scummy name. If you look at some of the older VHS designs, it's way more obvious that this film is trying to trick audiences into thinking it's from the Alien series, but the DVD copy I have is more abstract with a big bulging eye. There's a big outstretched hand that's spooky. Oh yeah, and there's some spelunkers. What has that got to do with Alien? Don't even bother getting excited though. All the answers are lame. It's not totally hopeless though, let's be fair. There are some things of note, including some weirdly good untapped ideas, but you know, it's still mostly pretty shit. The cheapness of the movie is quickly made apparent by what appears to be stock footage making up the first minute. The story relies on a team of astronauts coming back from space and bringing some kind of alien substance back with them. But like, if you can't properly show any of that, why not just change the script? Have it be, I don't know, an asteroid or a bright flash in the night, a crashed pod, something that actually makes sense within the limitations. Add on top the fact that this film has no respect for your time, and it leads to such an incredibly frustrating experience. For example, before we even meet the main character, they do shit like waste 32 seconds of screen time on a garage door slowly opening, the car casually reversing out, driving away, and then closing the garage behind them. We learn absolutely nothing in that time. It is pointless. Not to mention the fact that after this, they show the car driving for another 15 seconds more. What is this, Birdemic? It pisses me off so much when it's so transparent that they have no idea what to actually do in the movie to fill time to a feature length. I reckon you could probably cut about half of this film out, and not a single thing would be different about it. It's called an establishing shot, not an establishing minute! Yeah, really setting that horror tone. It takes 6 minutes for the first event of note to happen. The main character is this woman who's an expert on caves, who's being interviewed on TV. It's really boring.
Hello.
The lady, let's just call her, Maureen from now on, has a headache and is taken off set.
You know, Thelma's telepathic, and when something happens, she senses it, even at a distance.
What? Why is this guy just like, oh right, of course, yeah, that explains it. She's telepathic. Yep, that's a normal, everyday response to that, yep. 10 minutes in and probably the worst aspect of the story has already taken root. Maureen is a superhero who can foresee events before they happen. The only purpose it has in the narrative is that it robs the suspense, mystery, and surprise away from any potentially scary scene. Because every single time something is about to happen, she straight up ruins it. This is quite possibly the most bizarre choice in the entire movie. It shows a total lack of understanding of the genre, and it doesn't complement any kind of character, story, or growth. It's genuinely completely pointless. And it's not like this telepathic thing was just in there because it was in Alien. God, it's so dumb. Maureen heads over to the beach to meet her boat-dwelling therapist. Of course, it takes a full 40 seconds to watch them slowly row their boat over. Yep, that's it. Keep going. It's not like I've got anywhere to be. The only thing that would be more boring than this is if they went bowling or something. Oh, for God's sake.
Damn, I seen you on television. What happened?
Yikes. This bowling scene is supposed to establish the gang of spelunkers before they go on a mission. Yep, and you guessed it. It's really boring. Ticking away, the moments that make up a dull day. Fritter and waste the hours in an offhand way. Poor Maureen has a telepathic vision on the beach. No! And we finally get some alien action. A little kid finds an obscured bit of jelly that explodes on her face. Nice. Thank God something happened. While the spelunkers are getting dressed, one of them goes outside and finds a mysterious ball of sludge and brings it with them. Over a third of the movie is over and we're finally in the cave. All of the scenes down here, at least by a production standpoint, are surprisingly decent. I assume they filmed this within a real cave and that's why it looks so good. I just don't believe they would go to such lengths to create such impressive scenery when nothing else in the film is on this level. The fact I can't even tell is a good sign either way though. The director must genuinely really be passionate and love spelunking, because they spend an obscene amount of time showing the team crawling around, slowly descending, really slowly descending, gradually lowering themselves down, engulfing themselves in darkness as they sink deeper and deeper. We still going? Yep. Still going down. I'm running out of ways to describe the act of lowering yourself downwards. There's a really awkward sex scene as they go to sleep in camp, and when they wake up, they split up into groups to go exploring. We've got spelunking to do. One really annoying detail that bugged me more probably than it should have was how so many of these people were wearing helmets, but without the strap done up. What's even the point of wearing the helmet, you dingus? After they walk around for a good minute, one of them notices the stone from earlier has started moving around, and it sort of explodes in her face. They waste 3 minutes showing footage of the spelunkers going down and climbing up to get to the girl who got attacked, who seems strangely intact despite the attack. They then slowly lift her unconscious body up, and then we finally get the best sequence in the entire movie. Boom, alien out of the head. Look at that eye. Then there's some weird looking, what I think is reverse photography, where a bit of meat flies at the camera, and a pretty nice visual effect where this guy's head falls off. Unfortunately, you never really get a good idea of what this abstract alien goo really is. Sometimes it's a physical creature, other times it's a rock, and next up it becomes the walls. It's shot in such a way where you purposefully cannot tell what is really going on, which can be okay in some horror movies, when the mystery is used as a drip feed of subtle deaths before they reveal more towards the end. But they do such a bad job of building tension or remaining interesting that by the time you actually get to the deaths, it's kind of too little too late. Maureen has another vision.
Answer me. Answer me, Clem.
And every character is picked off one by one until Maureen and her boyfriend only just manage to escape. They drive around for a while and start noticing that everyone seems to be missing. It's implied that every single person in the world has disappeared. Oh, despite that shot where you can clearly see people driving around in the distance. Of course, they go to the most obvious location in times of crisis. The bowling alley. Oh, really again?
I'm gonna go take a look around.
Like any good horror movie character, they split up for no reason so they can quadruple the potential danger they're in. Oh, I guess he died and became tripe. Didn't see that coming. Alone and scared, Maureen runs around the isolated city until she gives up. The camera pans towards the sky and text pops up that reads, "You may be next." Wait, next for what exactly? I'm so unclear on what actually happened here. So here's the thing about Alien 2. There's some really brilliant ideas in it, seemingly by accident. A horror movie being set in a creepy cave is a genuinely excellent idea. Films like The Descent, which is a good-ass movie, have since lived up to that potential. But you have to give this film credit for doing it first. Speaking of, get this. The director of this movie actually tried to sue the producers of The Descent for being vaguely similar, not seeing the irony in how he himself only got away with making Alien 2 under the false pretense that it was a film from a more popular series that they didn't own the rights to. That they only just managed to dodge a $10 million lawsuit from 20th Century Fox because the word alien was hard to prove ownership of. Not cool, man. Despite how boring and cheap this movie is at times, and how bad the script is, and how I really would prefer to never watch it again, now and again it does do something that shows some competency. I like some of the transitions between shots. That's something, right? The smallest bit of talent did shine through this stalagmite-sized piece of shit, so for that all I can say is, thanks for not being a bad shark movie. Psycho Shark. Psycho Shark, or its real name, Jaws in Japan, is quite easily the worst film I've ever seen. And I know I've said that at least 7 times at this point in the past, but trust me, back then, I hadn't seen this. For as much of a classic as Spielberg's Jaws is, I will never forgive it for starting the killer shark craze. I've already covered Shark Exorcist and Jurassic Shark, which were genuinely so bad that I didn't think a shark movie could, for lack of a better word, sink any lower. But here we are. Where to even begin with you? This one is so goddamn lazy that its tagline is simply underwater terror. Yeah, I'll wear that on a t-shirt. Who the hell buys these films? Aside from me, of course. Beautiful girls are in danger, reads the first line of the blurb. At least this film doesn't beat off around the bush. Or does beat off around the bush. You know what I mean? Right. Sit down, listen. This film exists for 2 reasons. Firstly, to rip off Jaws and the endless cascade of killer shark movies that just will not stop. I'm gonna drown in these things one day. We, as the human race, just cannot get enough of shark movies. Move on. Find another animal to obsess over. And secondly, its second point of existing is to show off scantily clad Asian women in swimsuits. Congratulations, shark movie. What a original idea. I don't even know how much footage I'm going to be able to show because it was that exploitative. Every single scene feels like the start of a porno. The whole time I was waiting for the intercourse to begin. And I'm sorry to break this to you. I'm genuinely sorry for what I'm about to say. But the shark that's on the cover is in a total of 2 scenes in the entire film. The first of which is a fucking dream sequence, which doesn't even happen, so that definitely does not count. Meaning that when the shark does show up, when the shark shows up for real in this movie, it is in the final 2 minutes of its running time. The final 2 minutes. Imagine me, this dumbass right here, sat watching this bullshit for 68 minutes straight. And then this is the payoff to the name. I hate this film so much, you just don't understand. It might look kind of funny. It does look funny, look at it. It's ridiculous. But imagine if you were only allowed to look at this, to see this, after looking at a white screen. Nothingness. Total blank nothingness for 68 minutes straight. That describes the experience to me. That might as well be the story of this movie. Nearly the entire film is set in 2 locations. A creepy looking hotel room, or the beach. That's it. The movie is loosely framed around a girl who's sat in a hotel room watching footage of previous girls who've stayed there, like found footage or something. I guess there are some creepy guys who convince a couple of dumb lost college girls to stay at their lodge and then sacrifice them to a shark. This sounds like a category on Pornhub. But yeah, that's the end, that's the whole story. The rest of the film is just various shots of girls bending over to show their cleavage or ass. Now for some of you out there, this might sound like a great movie that might make it worth watching for you, despite the fact that we have this thing called, the internet, where you can search for whatever your heart desires at any time of your choosing. Maybe I could understand it if this film was released in the early 90s, where rude material was a bit harder to get a hold of. But it was released in 2009, for God's sake. Oh, that's the same year they released that other nearly naked ladies in the wilderness movie. Avatar. The amount of time dedicated to shower scenes is almost commendable, if it wasn't so creepy. I tried to find a picture of the guy who directed this, but no images of him seem to exist anywhere. I can only assume he looks something like this. The last thing I'll say about this movie that should perfectly encapsulate everything that it's going for, all the subtle nuances it's going for, is with this excerpt of that Aaron Sorkin-esque dialogue. I mean, this stuff's good, listen to this. It's salty. You licked it? Salty. The water's salty. The blue ocean is extremely salty. Yeah, isn't it salty? Most pornos have a better story than this. It's simply too boring to be worth anyone's time.
Bye-bye.
Seeing as I had less to say about Jaws in Japan than I initially thought, let me just shout out an honourable mention that nearly made it into this video. Seeing as we're currently going with a Spielberg ripoff theme for this segment, I have to mention this bizarre find known as Dinosaur from the Deep, released in 1993 to ride off the success of Jurassic Park. The story is absolutely absurd. It's set in a world where the death penalty is abolished, so the government sends criminals back in time to where their sentence still applied, and I guess dinosaurs get involved. The entire movie is in French and I couldn't find any working subtitles, so I just skipped through it to admire the awful special effects. Maybe one day I'll find the stomach to sit through the entire thing, but after sitting through 4 other films just like this, I thought I'd call it quits for now. Speaking of, there's still one more movie to talk about. Savior of the Earth. Wait, didn't we already do this one? Is it weird that I was kind of relieved by this film being animated? I thought I'd never want to see another rip-off animated film again, but somehow this was a breath of fresh air after everything I'd already seen. It's not good by any means. It's actually pretty hilariously bad in multiple ways, but it was the first out of these 4 that didn't have me checking my watch every couple of minutes. Maybe I'm just a fanboy of 2D animation no matter how terrible it is. So, Savior of the Earth, or its original Korean title, Computer... Here goes. Haikcheonhum Pokpa Dejakjeon, directly translating as Computer Nuclear Warship Bombing Operation. Gosh, that's a mouthful. Is a cheaply animated hour-long film that directly lifts many story ideas and visuals from the 1982 Disney movie Tron. It released in 1983, meaning all of the animation would have been rushed together in well under a year, hence the relatively cheap nature of it. Now, unlike the previous movies I've mentioned, where I was familiar with the source material, Tron is a movie I'd heard a lot about but had never seen until doing research for this video. To be honest, I didn't get that much out of it, seeing as it's aged so poorly in the worst way possible, but I do respect how revolutionary certain aspects of its presentation were for the time. Savior of the Earth, in contrast, has very little in terms of groundbreaking ideas, but I have to say I was genuinely surprised at how much variation there was in the animation, shading, and background artwork. Usually these rip-off films try about 900% less than this film does. Obviously, I mentioned that this film was produced in Korea. However, in 1987, it was dubbed into English to attempt to reach a bigger audience. And this is where the worst aspect of the film lies. Aside from the obvious copyright infringement, to the point where some sequences from Tron are pretty much stolen verbatim. The English version of this film was actually directed by Roy Thomas, a prolific writer for Marvel, who was the second major writer after Stan Lee, God rest his soul. This is one director's credit on IMDb. I'm just sort of stunned that this even happened. I've never seen such a big name attached to one of these types of films before. Anyway, at first, the plot is actually quite different to that of Tron's. It depicts a villain who finds the ultimate energy source and uses his great power to start causing chaos all around the globe. After a breaking point, the World Summit is called and 3 main characters are assigned with the job of stopping him, at which point they all get sucked inside a computer and it basically just becomes Tron, where they have to play games for their lives and try to survive in the computer landscape. One thing I will say is that it's really difficult to tell when a scene is supposed to be set in the real world or inside the computer. In the original Tron, there's a very stark contrast between the two, and there are enough visual indicators to let you know where you're supposed to be. But in Savior of the Earth, there really isn't much of a difference a lot of the time. They have cave formations and rocks inside the software, so it's hard to keep track at times. Really, one of my main takeaways from this film is that it seemed to be quite racist. I'll show you an example to see what I mean. Yikes! Later on in the film, a guy shows up who they refer to as Black John. What's wrong with just John? As I already mentioned, the voice acting is next level bad. Black John is clearly voiced by the whitest guy probably ever born. Whenever I hear his voice, I can't help but picture Ben Stiller for some reason. It reminds me of that infamous clip from that anime Black Heaven.
Hey, what the fuck? You got a fucking problem?
This voice acting's so bad, it's somehow worse than Hunt Down the Freeman, which is quite a feat, believe me. I'm convinced they only had one male voice actor and one female, and they didn't even try to distinguish their voices from character to character. Here are some hilariously terrible examples. There isn't really anything else of note about this movie, aside from small notes like how one of the villains looks identical to the one from Tron, and all sorts of other details that bigger fans of Tron will probably notice, which are obviously all straight lifted from it. The funniest thing about it is definitely the English dub, which is easily the worst I've ever heard. When I was trying to find this movie, I initially tried buying a physical copy for £158.61, because that's all I could find, but it got lost in the post and I got refunded, which is probably a good thing, honestly. This right here is not worth that kind of money. In the end though, I found someone had uploaded the entire film to YouTube with 30 views and 1 like and 1 dislike. I appreciate how in the description it's noted as having mild violence and racism. It's interesting how this movie kind of rounds off the 4 choices that are in this video. The English name is really similar to Turkish Star Wars' The Man Who Saved the World, and it steals famous music for its own use. Like, for no reason they just start playing Dank Earth. It has an entire sequence in a cave just like Alien 2, and it has the same runtime as Jaws in Japan. I really feel like this film should make me more angry, but when one of these films isn't boring the entire time, it just seems so entertaining in comparison. Oh, Christmas. Ranking the collection. So there we are, another 4 of these godforsaken cash grabs for the books. I guess it's time I ranked them from favourite to least favourite, and then add them to the entire Search for the Worst list. Despite its problems and feeling way too long, one cannot deny how simply epic Turkish Star Wars is. I'd happily put a poster up of that movie, it's so dumb and charming. Out of these 4, it's the one you could definitely have the most fun with friends watching. Next up, I'd have to say Saviour of the Earth. It's much more entertaining and doesn't drag as much as the others, and the terrible dub is too consistently funny to ignore. Next up, I'd say Alien 2. I've never seen a movie be so blatant about its filler. It's so poorly written and cheap in every way possible, but it has its moments, and the cave scenes at least looked surprisingly decent. Or should I say surprisingly decent. And last and least is Jaws in Japan. Honestly, my current least favourite movie of all time. It's quite a feat to make 70 minutes feel like 70 hours, so props for that. But it's skin-crawlingly slimy and creepy, exploitative of the women involved, and worst of all, repetitive and turgid to the point of tears. Not to mention it being a shark movie where the shark only shows up in the last 2 minutes, and it looks like absolute ass. For shame. I've added all of these movies to the ever-growing Search for the Worst ranking list, which you can find on my Letterboxd profile, which will be linked in the description. Thank you all for watching. Let me know which one of these movies you think looks the best and worst in the comments below. Make sure you check out the initial reactions to these movies and the trying to watch for this episode once that's been released and isn't immediately taken down. And I'll see you on the next video. Bye!